Hey there, my name is Rachael.
I'm Annie.
And I'm Shelby.
And welcome to the Magdala Podcast. We know from experience that pornography, masturbation, and other sexual addictions are not just a guy problem.
The need for women to be accompanied in their journey toward healing from addiction has gone sorely unmet, and that's why we're here.
Magdala is a space where women can find hope, healing, and freedom from sexual addiction through support, community, and accountability.
Here on the podcast, you'll find everything from testimonies to practical advice to discussions on how to live fully as a Catholic woman.
You are not alone, and wherever you are on your journey, we welcome you to this table.
Right, welcome back to the Magdala Podcast Season 6. Season 6. This is the intro to Season 6. Woohoo! We're all nodding like, yes, this is Season 6, but welcome back, everybody. We're excited to be kicking off a new season and excited about the topics that we have coming up. But today I'm joined by Annie and Shelby. We are the 3 members of the full-time Magdala staff. Small but mighty team. But today we're going to talk about authentic self-care in recovery. So there's a lot of, content or discourse around self-care. It's kind of thrown around as a pretty easy term, a cultural buzzword, if you will, but it has its place in recovery. It's just a question of what does that actually look like, and what does healthy self-care actually look like? So I'd love to hear, just off the top of y'all's heads, when you think of the term self-care, what comes to mind for you?
I think when I think of self-care from like a societal, like popular culture reference, I think immediately of like the treat yourself mentality, which essentially is just like, do what you want for like a certain period of time, buy what you want, eat what you want, whatever makes you like quote happy. And I think that's kind of the most common societal definition of it. When I think of it within the scope of like what we're going to be talking about today, I just think of it as whatever's going to bring you peace in that current season. So yeah, that's what I kind of think about. Annie, what about you?
That's a much more articulate answer. My very first thought when I think self-care is sheet masks. Do you remember those? That like paper that would just put like liquid on your face? I did that all the time in college. It didn't actually make my skin look better, but it felt nice, and at the time it was a peaceful experience for me. So when I think self-care, I think sheet masks, and I've never done the cucumber on your eye trick, but that's sort of my thoughts. I also think of that like charcoal like face mask thing that you have to peel off, but that always got stuck in my skin. So I know we're not going to be talking about skincare routines, though that could be a part of self-care. But if you guys have ever figured that out, please let me know, because I never figured that one out. So
Yeah, gotta have the right brand that actually peels. A lot of them say they peel and they don't,
I for sure got like the Dollar Tree brand, so that's probably
That might be. I think you're
That's
also
probably
thinking.
it.
I think you're thinking of face masks because so the week before we're recording this, we were all at Seek, or a week and a half before we were recording this, we're at the Seek conference in Columbus, and we were staying at Annie's house. And I like to do the little eye masks in the mornings, like the green. It's great. It has like caffeine and like
I love it.
some serum or something that makes, like my puffy eyes kind of like wake up a little bit, and it feels really nice and soothing, especially because I was super congested. It was great. So I think Annie's just recalling face masks out of a memory of my green eye masks every morning before sleep.
I think we bonded a lot on that trip, and learning about your eye care routine really, I think, brought us closer together as a team. So
that's why I do it. That's what it's about. No,
for team bonding.
I think like what you guys are pointing out is kind of where I think a lot of our minds go when we hear self-care, is that sometimes the cultural definition of self-care is just indulgence. So whatever is going to make you feel good in the moment, or
Totally.
feel pleasurable in the moment. And I think that's where we can kind of start to delineate a little bit of, it's not wrong to feel good or to want to feel good, but what is the definition of good? Like what Shelby said, like what's actually going to bring you peace in the moment. I also think we've all led support groups for Magdala at this point many times. We're in regular conversation with our volunteers and the women that we're serving. We're in recovery and healing ourselves. And I think our population really struggles to authentically take care of themselves. Annie, you also work as a dietitian. You have some expertise in this regard of women struggling to take care of themselves in the realm of food or nutrition. I think our population really struggles to find, what is the good I'm pursuing, and am I deserving of the good that I'm pursuing? So what are your guys' thoughts on this, of like our specific population that we're serving? If you're a woman in recovery, that indulgence might be tempting, but also like you may be just in a place of like a lot of self-loathing, or not really recognizing your worth, and so not pursuing good things for yourself in the first place. But how do you think self-care relates to our population particularly?
Well, what you're sharing just there, it's the voice of shame can just be so loud. And when the voice of shame is so loud, it tells you you're not worthy of nice things, you're not worthy of caring for. Especially for women that we serve, we talk about this a lot. If they fall into relapse, if they fall again, that's usually the last place that they want to care for themselves. And yet that's the place where the Lord is looking to share so much mercy, and that's the place where we need to bounce back and sort of put ourselves first as we continue on the journey. So I think the language of shame is just something that's gonna hold our population down, is one where it makes something like self-care much more difficult. But
Yeah, and I completely get where how easy it is to get our self-care wrong in this area, because again, the world is so loud, and the things that are noticeably pleasurable are also loud. So like it often turns into like a picking of lesser of two evils, like I'm not falling into sexual compulsion, but I'm overeating, or I'm not falling into sexual compulsion, or I spent all day watching TV. So it's kind of like it's a really hard balance to hit, because a lot of these things that do bring us authentic joy and authentic peace, one, they have to be discovered, and two, they're not often going to be the loudest thing in the room. So it takes a lot of discernment to figure out what your body, what your mind, what your soul needs in those moments specifically, which I think is a beautiful place of discernment, a beautiful thing to bring to the Lord too in prayer.
Yeah, you said the buzzword of discernment that I was thinking of when I was putting together our outline and wondering, like what is authentic self-care? If we wanted to give something kind of a succinct definition, I think it's where we find a balance of discipline and rest. And I do think discernment is the key, but I feel like self-care is like a balance of discipline and rest for the sake of the good. And the good being the good of your soul, the good of your body and your mind, but mostly the good of your integration as a human person. I've been thinking and reading a lot lately about self-regulation and hypo versus hyperarousal. So when we say arousal, I mean sensory arousal in general, like kind of the somatic experience of your senses, and not just sexual arousal. But there are psychological terms for, like, hypo is where you are, we'll say like on a scale of 1 to 10, you're in like the 1 to 3 or 1 to 2, and you are sad, depressed, numb, dissociative, like you're at the bottom of the ladder, so to speak. And then 8 to 10 is hyperarousal, where you're more prone to like big explosive feelings. You're anxious or panicky. There's terror, there's rage, like those big kind of difficult to handle emotions. And then the thing in between, so like we'll say the 4 to 6 on the ladder, is the window of tolerance. So that's where you're able to engage and be present with a sense of calm, but also like an active kind of sense of presence. So when we think of, when we're not stressed out, but we're feeling like maybe productive or very present in a conversation or whatever, that's like we're sitting in our window of tolerance. And addiction by its nature shrinks the window of tolerance. So does trauma, so do like a lot of adverse experiences. But I know in myself, and I know in the women that we're working with, a lot of the work of recovery is like trying to widen that calm window where you don't jump between hypo and hyperarousal all the time. And so I think there's also something to be said about self-care being what helps you widen the window of tolerance. And I do think that's where discipline and rest come in again, of like widening the window of tolerance from a psychological perspective can be like pursuing exercise that you find challenging and you like slowly build up some resilience like in your exercise, like lifting heavier and heavier weights, like or it can also be like engaging in a hobby that calms your mind, like reading or drawing or cooking or yeah, there's a lot of different types. So, or getting more sleep. There's so many different things that help widen that window. But I think it's interesting that most of the things that do help increase that state of calm engagement are things that may be hard to do, like progressive workouts or something difficult like that, or but it's also things that are inherently restful, like sitting down to an activity that you enjoy or getting more sleep. So I was just thinking about that, about like how, yeah, self-care hopefully widens that window of calm. It's not about just soothing ourselves in the moment. It's like, it's trying to increase our state of peace, like Shelby said at the beginning. And that does have to be discerned based on our individual needs.
I like the definition you give there too, that it's not just rest for the sake of rest, but it's rest that requires discipline to happen for the sake of the good. And I think that's where, when we talk about something like self-care in its glorified media way that it's been presented to us, I know I've always fallen under the trap of that it should just come naturally to me, right? That at the end of a long day, it should be easy to just soothe myself in these nice and relaxful things. But me being the overworked perfectionist that I tends to fill up my schedule with a lot of things, as both of you are laughing as we're on this call, and as so many women in our community experience the same thing, that something like self-care does require the discipline needed to actually set aside time to do something like this. I remember it was my sophomore year of college was the first time I, like, in my color-coded schedule, I like first put in blocks of time that were my designated self-care time, and each day was a scheduled different thing. I think I stuck to that schedule for maybe a week and then didn't stick to it because I just had so many other things to do, and it felt almost like a waste of my time because there were more, quote, productive things to do. So I just appreciate the definition that you gave there. The need for discipline is actually a huge part of self-care, and truthfully why a lot of women in our community struggle, because in the realm of recovery, something that you need is discipline, and that's something that you're working on in a lot of areas of life. So to work on it also in the area of self-care just adds another level there. But I like that. Discipline and rest, the need for both.
Yeah, and just thinking of regulation too, or like self-regulation or soothing, and like why I think we all believe it should come naturally to us, like you said, is those are tools that we're supposed to be given in our childhood and family of origin, and a lot of us were not given them super well. I think our generation of parents perhaps is focusing more on this as an emphasis in parenting, of like, oh, I teach my children how to self-regulate, right? But they can't do that themselves when they're little. And often, like, even into adolescence, you still need to assist teenagers a lot in regulating to a certain degree. But I think the way we were raised, at least kind of, I'll say from more of a cultural standpoint, was like, go away and figure out your feelings by yourself, right? Like there's a lot of like timeouts, or like in which aren't a bad tool per se or something like that. I think they can be well utilized, but I know in my family there was more of that than like validation and like, okay, let's regulate this, right? So a lot of us were responded to in our like hyper states or our hypo states with like, go figure this out for yourself, but you can't, like, you don't know how. And that's where sexual compulsion does come in very readily. It's like just a way to self-soothe. And so finding new replacement behaviors that are authentically caring for yourself are very difficult, because you're also crowding out the behaviors that you've learned to like trust can soothe you quickly. So I think that's where discipline comes in too, is it's like you're letting go of a behavior that actually doesn't help you and soothes you quickly, but like doesn't doesn't help you in the long term. And then you're trying to replace it with behaviors that maybe don't like soothe you very quickly in the moment, but over the long run build up like a lot of health in mind and in body. So I think there's that element too. A lot of us were expected to regulate ourselves from a very young age, and we can't.
Yeah, as you guys have been talking about this, Joseph Pieper's teachings on leisure come to mind. And it's exactly what like Rachel was saying earlier, is that just because something is hard doesn't mean it doesn't bring you peace. So, I mean, if you think about the scope of our lives, very few things have actually become natural to us. So, like when we're babies, we like naturally learn to eat or breathe or like just sit up and stuff like that. But it doesn't mean it doesn't take practice. And now as adults, like we're much more aware of how hard things are, how hard it is to form good habits. Um, and yeah, just because you can only read 10 pages of a book at a time doesn't mean that it should be like abandoned, you know? Like our bodies our bodies and our rational souls are very keen on picking up new habits. It's just up to us to what we're giving our attention to. Um, so yeah, like reading, playing a musical instrument, any form of the arts, those are all like inherently life-giving and peace-giving. And it doesn't mean they're not hard. It just means that, you know, they elevate the mind in ways that other activities can't as well. It doesn't mean those other activities are bad either. Like we all need to work, um, we all need to go about our daily lives and do things that aren't fun. It's just finding those moments and recognizing within yourself when you need those moments in order to do the things that you have to do. And then, yeah, as Rachel was talking about, like being raised in the environments, I thought of this video I saw recently, and it was a girl talking about whether you grew up in a sleep supportive household or like a sleep like regressive household. But basically, like, was sleep and rest encouraged in your household? And for most millennials, I would say it was not. We were very like, you have to work, achievement driven, all of that stuff. I know naps were very, very like not encouraged in my family, to the point where if I take a nap or if I fall asleep unexpectedly now, I get like stressed out because I'm like, oh my gosh, think of the things I could have done in the hour, you know? Um, but yeah, like good rest, like paying attention to your needs, paying attention to your stress levels and figuring out, okay, can I afford to take some time to myself? Is it okay to sacrifice this one deadline that I thought I was going to be able to finish, but you know, my body's not responding well to it? Like all of that takes discernment. But we can't just ignore these areas because that's how burnout happens. And when burnout happens, nothing good follows.
100%. I think too, like this kind of counters the I'll say like fasting and penance mindset that we often have around addiction and recovery. It's not that fasting and penance is like it's not a good spiritual practice. It is. But I think sometimes when we kind of characterize a very nuanced, complex thing like compulsive sexual behavior, when we're like, oh, bad, sin, okay, answer is penance. And it's like that, okay, real penance would be, again, learning discipline over time that actually puts you in a healthy place. I think that's harder than praying a rosary or fasting for some addicts sometimes. But I think sometimes if we're like, oh, you struggle with indulgence, therefore the answer is yeah, fasting or something like that. I think I just think that can be dangerous, particularly for women. I know Annie would have some expertise on that, again, from her work as a dietitian, but assigning fasting or even harsh penances, and I'm talking more like outside the context of the confessional. Of course, we should do our penances like when we receive the sacrament of confession, but when we kind of look to those like deprivations as a way to solve our indulgence, it's not going to work. And I don't think looking at the population of women that we work with, looking at our own stories, that did not really work for me. And also I think for a lot of women, it can bridge into self-harm so easily. So I think real self-care is crucial to the recovery process, because again, it's not necessarily easy. It's not necessarily pursuing habits that are inherently pleasurable or again soothing immediately, but they produce long-term health in like the body and the soul and the mind. And that's what slowly crowds out indulgence, not flipping the switch between indulgence and deprivation, right? So I'd love to kind of pivot a little bit of just kind of sharing, and obviously after any thoughts about fasting, because why not? I know Annie has thoughts, but there's I would love to pivot after any thoughts to kind of sharing how we've approached self-care, how we're approaching self-care, just kind of in our lives in general, and where we've perhaps seen women in our community prioritize it really well, or like ways that we see them care for themselves. Because I think women listening to this who are like, yep, this is me. I'm constantly fluctuating between that like hypo and hyper state. And I do feel indulgent and I don't know where to begin, or I don't feel like I deserve real care. So we can kind of pivot to story sharing, but would love any thoughts on, that kind of the flipping the switch between indulgence and deprivation first.
I just wanted to share, not even from a nutritional lens, but using the language of fasting and penance in this space often comes as a punishment for something that we still don't understand what is wrong. And what I mean by that is it's not that most of the women in our community, it's not that they struggle to understand that engaging in pornography or sexual compulsion is wrong. It's that the root cause of what led them into that still has yet to be uncovered. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so instead of taking time to care for yourself, which is then filling those unmet needs, which is then actually solving the problem at hand, what you're doing is punishing yourself for something that you didn't know was wrong. Like the only example that comes to mind again is like little kid steals something and you say, go sit in the corner. And they're like, why? And you're like, just do it. And that's like, okay, well, that doesn't help them learn what was the thing that was wrong. And often our women don't have the space to like figure out what are these unmet needs that I need to figure out, these deep longings in my heart, this feeling of unwantedness and this feeling of unrest in my heart. Where's that actually coming from, so that I can actually solve the root cause problem instead of just try to band-aid it with the super hyper discipline thing that's supposed to make me look super holy. It's not actually fixing the problem.
Yeah, 100%. Well said. So, and I think it's helpful to separate self-care maybe into some categories, but would love to hear just kind of what self-care looked like for us, maybe in early sobriety, or what it looks like now, in a few different areas. And again, I think stories of the women that we know within Magdala will also come up. But I think in the realm, speaking of fasting, in the realm of nutrition and food, I know care for me, I don't have a history of disordered eating. So care for me has more looked like, I think just the basic, like, make sure I eat 3 meals a day that are actually filling to me, and that I enjoy. Like, I think it's important to enjoy the food that you eat. So I try to focus on like whole unprocessed foods where I can, and make my meals as nutrient dense as I can. Also, I think since becoming a mom, I had like anemia in my pregnancies and stuff. So I just needed to be fortified by my food a lot more after having kids. So just focusing on actually preparing myself meals that I enjoy and that make me feel good, I think are really important and give me energy for the work I have to do in my day as a mom and with Magdala. But I'd say, care in the realm of food, that's more simple for me, but would love to hear what's coming to mind for you guys of how to care in that realm.
I'm thinking of a particular woman in one of my small groups who started session by in our check-in saying something along the lines of like, since starting Magdala, I feel like the Lord just about a healing in all of me. So I've started looking at like the foods that I eat and other things. And as the check-in progressed, at least 3 other women shared like, wait, I just started seeing a dietitian, or I just started looking at my diet too. And it was this reality of one of the first things I feel like that we look at is food. And it's because we're in constant need of it. multiple times a day. Something like sleep, which we'll talk about too, obviously important. For most people, it happens at one main chunk during the day, as opposed to food, hopefully, is happening multiple times during the day. And so it makes sense that it's one of the first things that we sort of look at in the realm of self-care. I mean, just from a dietetics lens, like general nutrition practice says that like consistent nourishment, meaning every 3 to 4 hours, is just healthy practice for the majority of individuals. So just consistently giving your body something is always a best practice. And I just know with a lot of women that we've worked with, right? Things like skipping meals, being too busy, being too overbooked in a productive mindset can leave them forgetting food until very later in the day. Again, skipping meals, just having a small on the go something. And I just feel like best practice is always to make sure you have something in your system at all times. During one season of my life, something that was really important for me, just for my own stability, was always having some snack food always on hand for me, like always in my backpack. If I was a camp counselor or on my college campus, as a nutrition student, the teachers were big about you could eat in class, so that was easy for me. But always having a snack on hand, even if it was just like mini fruit strips or fruit snacks, or string cheese was one for a certain period of time. I love whole grain crackers. I'm convinced that whole grain goldfish tastes better than real goldfish. Try for yourself, okay? But I remember there were different seasons of my life I would just have a whole bag of it in my backpack. And it led to community because then I would share it with other people and we would all eat together. But I think having snacks on hand is always just like a helpful tool for me, and has allowed me to always eat something. Even if I feel ill-prepared or like I quote forgot, I always have something on hand so I can always be fueled. Amen. Shelby, any thoughts on food?
I don't have a ton of thoughts on food, but I have noticed that this has specifically been since like I have entered like more of a serious in-person relationship where I have another human coming over for dinner multiple times a week. um, but I have found it really, really helpful to have a mix between, like, leftovers and meals that I have to cook within the week, just so that it's not like you have to cook every single meal every single day. There are just, like, easy meals that you can grab out of the fridge, allowing myself, like, a frozen pizza maybe once a week just, like, out of pure ease because it's very easy for me to be, like, stressed out or feel overwhelmed when I'm, like, working all day, I'm, like, cleaning, I'm doing a whole bunch of things, and then I also have to cook a dinner, you know? So I find it helpful to have those times during the week where I can give myself to cooking because it is a leisure activity for me. But just like anything else, if I overexhaust myself within that activity, it can have the opposite effect. So I think having a mix of, easy meals versus meals that take a little bit of effort throughout the week has been really, substantial for me, and not feeling like reminding myself that it's okay to have an easy meal once in a while, like, not putting too much pressure on the exact things that I'm eating or, like, what it's gonna do to my body or what it's gonna, like, have the consequences of it, like, if I'm craving Chick-fil-A, I might wait a few days and then allow myself to get it, because it makes me happy in that moment, but it's not like an immediate indulgence thing, like I'm not having Chick-fil-A every single day type of thing. So,
Yeah, I was about to add the follow-up to that. So like, what if I want Chick-fil-A every day? Yeah, but I think you make a good point of like, Annie could say a lot more than I could about like hungerful cues, but like just listening when your body is both hungry and when it's full. And then if you're noticing, because I think to me, a craving feels different than being hungry. Like when I'm craving sugar, I might be hungry at the same time. I might not be. It might just be 3 p.m. and I'm hitting my caffeine slump. So I think in those moments, sometimes it's caring for yourself to be like, okay, let me pause, let me hydrate, let me see what's going on. Am I just in my caffeine slump? Do I need to take a walk? Or sometimes, I don't know, I think care can be going and grabbing the chocolate chip cookie that you made last night. I'm a big fan of, I don't know, having food in your house that you like look forward to eating too. So, the last thing I'll say about food is coffee. I've seen like the war on caffeine, I feel like, playing out lately, and I'm a passionate defender of caffeine, but I think it should have its place as like assisting you and not covering up exhaustion, right? So if you're using coffee to cover up that you're tired, or in place of a meal, just hoping for like an energy boost, that's not using the substance of caffeine well. I'm thinking of myself primarily like in grad school. Um, I would have like 4 or 5 cups a day because I wasn't sleeping well. And then that would cause me to still not sleep well. So it wasn't caring for myself to have that much caffeine in my day and be drinking coffee from the moment I wake up until about 5 p.m. That wasn't helping me. And probably what would have helped me is, yeah, more fuel, more food or snacks, and actual good sleep. But so I'd say war on caffeine, I think, sometimes can be a little too aggressive, but it has its place, and it can be a great tool, but I don't know. I think, yeah, has to be put in its place. That's the last thing I'll say about caffeine as I sip my latte on this recording. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, I actually I made the conscious effort like a couple weekends ago to stop buying Coca-Cola when I go to the store, because as the ladies know, I love Coca-Cola. It is by far my drink of choice. But I also am horrible at drinking water. Like, I've never enjoyed drinking water. I don't usually have a water bottle on hand, and ever since moving to Indiana, like, the water's just not as good here as it was in Florida and Michigan. So now it's even worse. But I was finding that I would have, like, when I was thirsty, I was probably thirsty for water, but I would grab Coke because I know that I'm going to enjoy Coke more than water. So I stopped buying Coke because I knew that that would lead me to drink more water. And I still allow myself to have Coke when I like go out to like a restaurant, or like if we're on a road trip and we like get McDonald's, I'll get a Coke. But then it makes it more of like a little treat than it is like a replacement for something that is inherently good for me, like water. Um, so yeah, I'm happy that you brought that up, because that is something very recent that I did, to try to encourage a good habit, but not like shun the thing that I enjoy.
For sure. Any other thoughts on food before we talk a different category?
I think discernment and moderation are the names of the game. That anything that we share, if it's made you think rash decisions of what you're eating, that's not at all what we're sharing. And try discernment again. Name of the game is every single body is different and every single need is different. And often we know well which ways we are fueling ourselves well or not. So general rules of thumb, eating consistent meals, drinking water. Oftentimes we're not doing those things. Like even in a nutritional practice, something you can talk about is like the nutritional hierarchy of needs. If you've heard of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that at the very basis, you have to talk about adequacy. So meaning, are we getting adequate amounts of things? And then as you move up, then you can talk about actual balance, actual macronutrients and micronutrients, those things. But at the end of the day, many of us struggle with the first piece, just adequate. Having the right amount, whether too much or too little. So fuel yourself with the things that you enjoy, that taste good. And yeah, use discernment. Invite the Lord into it. And why are you choosing the foods that you're eating? Is it just to cope and for emotional things, or are you celebrating the gift that God gave you? Those are the things. For me, It's always Diet Dr. Pepper. It's always a celebration from the Lord. Thank you, God, for DDP. Amen.
Yeah, drinks of choice on this team are very dearly held. I obviously love coffee. I'm also a kombucha girly, so if I want something sparkly, it's usually a kombucha, but Coke and Dr. Pepper, yes, or Diet Dr. Pepper are very dearly held on this team as well.
Diet Dr. Pepper, thank you for clarifying. Very different. Yeah. Thank you.
The Magdala podcast is sponsored by the Catholic Theology Show, presented by Ave Maria University. The Catholic Theology Show covers themes such as the value of a Catholic higher education, religious liberty, how to pray, the philosophies of St. Thomas Aquinas, and more. Stream episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and learn more by visiting the link below.
Another area that I think is prone to excess or or just neglect. I think in culture is just movement. I think I think we're getting to a more balanced place in cultural conversation about exercise, but I think for a long time, we were kind of in this like, you either go hardcore at the gym 6 days a week and allow yourself one rest day, or you like don't do anything at all. And I think we are getting to a much more balanced place of like, there is a lot of in between there, but that it's like important and healthy to pursue some discipline of moving your body. So I know movement has become really important in our conversations in Magdala. Um, and I think I've experienced, at least in a small group setting, both of those extremes kind of like on display. Like I can think of a group member who was hardcore committed to the gym. Um, and I think at a base level, there's something very good there. There's like a good amount of discipline there. But it was funny that it, she would pour herself into the gym hoping that it would kind of rescue her from unwanted sexual behavior. I think again that comes from sort of like a soul penance. We'll get rid of this mindset of like put your body through hard things and then it won't want this thing anymore. It's like actually sometimes if you continue beating down on your body, it's only going to want to act out compulsively more, right? So I had a participant like that. I also had one who just yeah, I was dealing with a lot of like body image shame and just didn't even want to try a practice of movement because she was afraid of embarrassment or just feeling more shame. So I've seen like kind of both extremes playing out. I know like my kind of, I'll say like journey with or reliance on movement has just morphed a lot over the last 5 years, especially going through 2 pregnancies and postpartums. Like my body, how my body looked and how my body felt changed so much 2 times in a span of about 2 years or 3 years. So I think maybe before I would have been prone to excess of like I need to go all in 100% and just make it very hard. Like a good workout to me was one that I found very hard. And then slowly over pregnancy and postpartum twice, I think I learned like just exercise again, like food, it should be there to energize you and serve you in the life that you're in. And so I think movement has become now an exercise and routine with that now has become like, yeah, what does my body need today? And like, again, discernment, it's going to be a theme that we return to over and over throughout this episode, clearly. But I have several types of exercise that I like. I try to include some form of movement in my day, but I'm just kind of in a season of waking up and listening to like, yeah, what does my body need today? Does it need maybe a long walk? Does it need to lift heavy weights? Does it need both of those things? Like what movement do I feel like will serve what my body needs today? I think in early recovery too, I look to exercise as a way to just like get the tension, like the energy out of like almost anxious withdrawal that I was having from sexual compulsion. It's like, if I just go exercise, this will feel better. And sometimes that was true. And sometimes it totally wasn't. And looking back, I think if I had paid maybe a little more attention to what I feel now back then of like, okay, what does my body need today? Maybe it wouldn't have had kind of this, touch and go kind of response sometimes. But I think, yeah, movement can be a really integral part of self-care and recovery, but it also can be a way that we continue to beat down on ourselves and shame ourselves if we're not careful.
In terms of movement, I admittedly, this is my worst area of self-care. Like by far the worst. I am the kind of person that when I go to the doctor and they're like, "How often do you exercise?" I'm like, "I walk."
Walking is
But
exercise. I think that's one of the greatest movements in the
yes,
cultural
but I'm talking about like
conversations. Like
walking around the grocery store, not like
you
planning
walk
to
on your
walk.
walk, you walk on your walking pad. We all walk on our walking pads. Magdala,
That's true.
requirement to work
We
for Magdala is now having a walking pad.
Yes, we do all have walking pads, which is fantastic. Walking pads and standing desks, lifesavers. However, I am even that goal of like trying to walk once a day, like at my desk. I don't think I've walked on my walking pad since like Christmas. Um, but I think also one, it's good to know where the areas are for improvement. Like, I know that the movement area is an area for improvement. It is also the one that is tied directly to a lot of my triggers and like my past traumas. So obviously, it's like a little bit harder to find leisure in those areas, which is completely fine to admit. And it's like actually it's important to look at these areas of leisure and figure out which one needs a little bit more grace, a little bit more compassion than the others, because there is one, at least one in each of us. And for me, it's like my body in college, I worked out, pretty regularly. I enjoyed it. I had the habit built. It was great. I had a free gym that I could go to. And then post graduation, I didn't have a free gym anymore. So the intention went out the window. And then I started to feel bad that I wasn't working out. Um, my body has looked pretty much the same since I got out of college. So I have to continually remind myself of that, of like, okay, like your needs have changed. Your body is like adapting to those needs. Like, just kind of, it's not all about keeping one image and it's not all about meeting the societal standard. Um, and now, yeah, like it's a win if I walk a mile on my walking pad, which like 5 years ago, that would have been like nothing, because I was usually going to the gym for an hour. But it's a new season of life. I have grown a lot in those 5, 6 years. Um, and there's still a lot of growth to be done. So specifically for like movement in my self-care, I think it's just having those small wins and then not beating myself down when those wins aren't achieved or when I have like a day where I haven't moved as much. It's like the mental affirmation is just as important in those moments as the physical affirmation of like having worked out or having moved that day. But that's specifically for me and just like where I'm at right now.
I think that's super important because I think all of us have been or will hit a phase like that again. Like, I can think of a phase 2 years ago where I was like, yeah, where movement was really difficult to incorporate into my life and probably the area I was struggling in self-care the most. So I think what you're sharing is very pertinent to all of our lives, or will become pertinent very soon. I'm also thinking of like, it's funny enough, like one of the like mindset switch moments that I had about movement was I did this in my first pregnancy. I was working out from home, wasn't going to a gym anymore, because being pregnant at the gym is just, it's a fun experience. But I wasn't going to a gym at the time and working out from home, and I did this prenatal bar program. And the instructor is like this super cheery, like motivational self-talk kind of lady. And at first I was like, ugh, I roll. This is going to be terrible. But I really liked how bar made me feel while pregnant. And it was like at one point, like, or she, not at one point, but she kept on reiterating the message of um, like exercise is not meant to deplete you. And it's not good if it's hard. It's good because you're here. And I remember like that kind of mindset of like, oh yeah, it's just good that I'm here and that like I'm pumping this 3-pound weight while growing a baby, and like this is what I'm doing today. And I think that was such a funny mindset switch for me in that program, oddly enough, of like this instructor that I thought was just gonna make me cringe. It ended up being a really healthy thing of like, yeah, the small wins are everything. And yeah, just showing up with what you got and picking something that works for you, I think is huge. Danny, I know you've got thoughts. You love the Planet Fitness.
Planet, if you're listening to this, sponsor me. I do love the Planet Fitness. But what you were just sharing, I think has been huge in my journey of movement has been learning a lot of what's actually enjoyable and life-giving for me. Growing up an athlete, being a 2-sport college athlete, I was always in the gym. I was always moving. I was always doing things. So movement was always sort of a part of my schedule. So I always liked the gym. I liked a lot of different types of movement. You guys have heard me talk about Zumba Praise, me and my best friend Paige. I love to move and dance. I love the Planet Fitness. Love to lift. Used to be big into, I'll say, more powerlifting in college, and in the past year or two, have started shifting a lot more to different lighter forms of cardio, which I would have never done in college. I was like, the cardio's for wimps, or whatever my like ultra gym bro mindset was at the time. And it's just been beautiful to see in my own heart, to see like I'm going to choose the forms of movement that are life-giving for me, that I actually want to do, that I walk into the planet, and I don't say, okay, what do I have to do? What's on my like gym schedule today? But just being like, what do I feel like doing? I know we could talk a while about this, but like, where am I in my cycle, and like, what can I handle right now? When I am ovulating, I can always hit a PR on one of the machines, so then I feel amazing. But if I'm on my period, I might choose a light stationary bike, because that's all I can really handle. And it's been beautiful to just sort of listen to my own body and my own needs. Just go for a walk and skip the gym. Like, those are mindsets I would have never like done in the past, but really just being able to take a second, like pause, discern, and listen to my body and see what it wants. But a lot of times the Planet Fitness offers a lot of variety, so that's why I go there, and it's very cheap. I use my referral code. Can I say that on this podcast? Sorry, somebody else.
Referral
somebody
code
else go.
will be in the notes. Dead. No, but I think like that it just relates a lot to the theme of what we're talking about, of sexual compulsion is meeting a need in your body and your mind. It is meeting it falsely. It's meeting it in a healthy way, but it does meet a need, or Band-Aid solutions need, at least. And so I think a lot of like the result of a longer term recovery is the ability to kind of tune in to your body and mind, and listen to what it needs. And I think routine is great. We could talk about routine and self-care, but I think, like you're saying, Annie, like letting go of this rigidity of like, this is what I have to put my body through. This is what I have to do in order to be fit, be healthy, be valuable, whatever. That's still like, giving into a mindset I think we're used to in sexual compulsion, is like, I have to do this thing in order to be okay. And we're trying to let go of that mindset, in all areas. I had another thought that came to my mind and then left it. Oh, listening to your body. I think an area for me that's been important too is listening to when I'm ready to be challenged, of like when I'm ready to do something new. Like this year I trained for a half marathon, or I mean in 2025, I trained for a half marathon with about 10 weeks to train, because a friend was going to run it, and she was going to run it alone and was in a tough spot in her life. And I was like, you shouldn't have to run this half marathon alone. So I signed on late. I don't recommend training for your first half marathon with only 10 weeks. But I did like think through that and discern it, of like, would this be good for my body right now? To put it kind of through this challenge of distance running. And I was never a distance runner. And I like gleaned a lot from that experience. I was really, really grateful for the opportunity. I don't know, if I'm going to run one again anytime soon, but I was also grateful to like tune in when my body was ready for a challenge and honor that need for a challenge, and then step back once I was done. The course, fun fact, I told you guys this obviously after it happened because I was full of resentment. It ended up being 15 miles and I only trained up to 10 miles. So I went like one Saturday I did my distance run, hit 10, the following Saturday's the half marathon, and it ended up being 15 miles. It was crazy. So anyway, that's why longer training time is better. But yes, listen to the need for rest. Again, listen to the need for discipline and challenge too when it's time. And see what that challenge looks like. And it doesn't have to be a half marathon. It can be something unique. But okay. I think this is because I'm a mom, but self-care in solitude and quiet. Annie had another thought. I want you to chime in with that. But I want to talk about like solitude. Maybe we can loop in prayer as in with that too, since we're running low on time. But we want to talk about that next. Annie was clicking off the mic, though. So you got to talk. You got something to say.
This is good. My one practical that I just wanted to throw in when we're talking a lot about listening to body cues, so both hunger and fullness cues, body cues when it comes to like exercise and what we can handle. Oftentimes, if we live in the realm of extremes, we sometimes have to relearn what it's like to re-listen to body cues. And exercise is one of the best places that we can do that. So the place of like, my heart rate is sort of elevated right now, like literally just going on a brisk walk and like taking I'll call it a mindful brisk walk can be a practice that can help you relearn some of these cues. So if you're someone who's listening to this and you're like, I have no idea how to listen to my body of like what it needs right now, something of like doing any type of movement that you enjoy, literally just go on a walk for a second and start to listen to some cues. Like, how is your breathing? Is your heart rate elevated? Can you feel any part of your body sweating? Like, even that is like a first indicator of some different things that your body is signaling you to something. Learning some of those practices when you're already in exercise can help you then identify things when your body's not in movement. But so exercise is one of those things that can help you relearn those cues. So just wanted to throw that in as a practical.
That's awesome. Awesome. Again, I feel like my bringing in of solitude and self-care is partly because I'm a mom, and so this is a discipline that I think is harder to have with small children. It's just time alone, time in the quiet. Some people might be in seasons of life where they're like, I have too much time in the quiet. So that's different, right? And I think time in isolation is not necessarily time in solitude. We can talk about that in a second. But I think I'm thinking of many things all at once. Apologies. But I think our population and the women that we serve, I can say with certainty that every woman in Magdala I have encountered is there because she loves Jesus and wants to be close to him. Like, that's just fact of the matter. But many women are not sure how. I've had so many moments, seasons of not being sure how to pursue closeness with the Lord and how to pursue solitude. So closeness with myself and closeness with him. Because I think when we're struggling with sexual compulsion or habitual sin, there's like a fear of being alone with oneself and with God, a fear of being in solitude because we're afraid of feeling the weight of what's happening, and we're afraid of feeling all of the things that send us towards these behaviors. We're afraid of being overwhelmed by ourselves, I think, in our experience. So I think time in meaningful solitude, I'll say prayer, quiet reflection, meditation, whatever you want to put to it, I think is incredibly important for self-care. Number one, because it calms the nervous system. So it kind of regulates you like we were talking about earlier, but it also creates hopefully more and more authentic love for oneself. So I know like when I was in I'll say early recovery, prayer became really important, but at first was like a very anxious thing. Like daily prayer could be really full of anxiety for me because again, I had that fear of like just being alone with myself. So finding ways to pray that allowed me to experience what I was experiencing and feel what I was feeling, get my thoughts out with the Lord were really important. So journaling was huge, was a huge form of prayer for me. It still is, but it was absolutely crucial at that time in my life. So, and I think starting small too, of like spending 15 minutes in the quiet, maybe, reading something reflective or journaling without your phone, without the opportunity for distraction. And when you feel that itch to reach for a distraction come up, you don't reach for it. I think, starting incrementally small is really important, but solitude to me is a huge part of self-care. Again, I think this is in part because I'm a mom, and so time alone is very sacred right now, but I think it's sacred for everyone. So
Yeah, I love time alone. I'm a big old introvert. So I just, even though I have been living alone for the last like 5 years, every single year I've gotten like more comfortable with like introvert lifestyle and just kind of like silence. And most days I don't even listen to music when I'm like working or anything. It's just you start to like crave that silence. So I love that silence. Um, and when Rachel was talking about the fear of, like fear of being alone or fear of like solitude or anything, I thought about how when I was still it's still one of my triggers, but when I was really like deep in the midst of addiction, a big trigger for me was just loneliness. And I used to be a big extrovert, so it was like know the feeling of just literally just wanting to be around people and hating being by myself. And luckily, through like my life experiences, the Lord kind of like weaned that out of me very naturally. But still, even when I became introverted and like started to feel more comfortable in that, loneliness was still a big factor. So I found it really helpful to go places to pray. Like if I prayed in my apartment when I was completely alone, like the temptation, it's very easy for it to enter, and like you're alone, you're in like private spaces, everything's quiet around you. The temptation was just really loud to me in those moments. So if I could go to like an adoration chapel, or if I could just go sit inside a church, um, or like go like on a rosary walk or something, those were moments where prayer was really useful to me because I was like not in a private environment, but I was still entering into internal solitude. Um, so it was really that was like a game changer for me. To this day, one of my favorite things to do is just to go to adoration, Eucharistic adoration, and just sit there. Like don't bring a journal, don't bring a Bible. I just love to sit there and just look at Jesus and have him look at me. Like that is just one of my favorite things. Um, and that was not possible 4 years ago. Like I was a big like journaler and everything like Rachel said, but it's just yeah, you have to discernment becomes a continual thing because as your seasons change, your needs change and your environments change. You change as a person. So yeah, when I was in the beginning of recovery, journaling was really helpful. It was like a lot of writing down big feelings and just feeling like I was talking straight to God, which was really helpful for me. And then I could read it back and have more clarity about what I was feeling. Um, Now it's just going to Eucharist adoration and just sitting there for 15 minutes and just kind of enjoying that peace of just that environment. Um, yeah, so that's what I've experienced within, like, prayer specifically. Um,
It's
I have other,
beautiful.
like, leisure things that I like to do in like, just to, like, quiet the mind, but they're a little different and separate from prayer, so maybe I'll bring those up later.
Yeah, I love that though. Just again, yeah, figuring out like I think often about how like when you're dating someone or now like in my marriage, like my husband knows my personality and knows like my preferences, knows what I like and dislike. And so I know that about him. I know these things about him. So when we try to relate to each other, we try to relate as the other person can be related to. And I think about how the Lord does that for each one of us too. Like it makes me think of that quote. It may be Brother Lawrence, but it said like, pray as you can, not as you can't. And like for me, I'm a big thinker, as you guys both know. I like think through my feelings. So my thoughts come first. My feelings sometimes come much later. I don't necessarily know how I'm feeling about something immediately. Um, so even like in solitude or just like prayer practice, spiritual reading has been huge for me because I can intellectually connect with material to pray with first and like kind of think through something and then access feelings kind of through that process and relate those to the Lord. So I think even like the Lord wants to relate to us um in the way that he made us to be related to. And he's like super considerate of those specifics. And so this also it's going to be discerned. And he's about to talk about her prayer, which is going to be great.
My feelings come first and second and third, and then they're all feelings. So I love the different personalities on our team. And the only thing I was going to add is a practice through a lot of my recovery that the Lord called me into in different seasons. So super helpful for me was going on, I called it date nights with the Lord. but it was it was outside of normal personal prayer time that I would take usually sometime in the morning, but it was usually sometime in the evening, either in a quiet part of like my apartment house wherever I was living in college, or going to a chapel, going to an adoration chapel, and giving the Lord just like an hour and a half, 2 hours of my time. It wasn't always a specific, I'll say, holy hour. Sometimes I sat in the back and I colored. Sometimes I ended up taking a nap. Sometimes I would bare my entire heart and soul to the Lord, and it felt like a very intimate date night. But sometimes it was in my apartment, and I would just play a favorite worship song of mine and had a favorite drink, and I just knew the Lord like was with me, you know. But it was just a practice of just that. When we talk about solitude, yes, it's being alone, but it's being alone and knowing that we're with the Lord. Like that's different than isolation, where we're trying to push everything and everyone out, right? And so just that experience was something to me, especially in the seasons of recovery, where I felt like somebody was there. It's not like the thunders opened and the Lord revealed the ultimate calling on my life, but I just felt like He was there with me and in the everyday and what I was doing, and it was always a very special time for me.
It's super beautiful, and I'm thinking about my ritual for years, like in college, kind of in early recovery too, and then even now. I mentioned my love for caffeine a little while ago, but um my like prayer ritual has been to make my cup of coffee in the morning in the quiet, hopefully before my kids wake up, and sit and like have coffee with the Lord. So it's like my morning coffee time. So I think the sense that someone is there, I think, is super huge. I still love that. I love that feeling, because again, even if that last 10 minutes and my kids wake up or something else happens, that 10 minutes is super fruitful and special, and it's the time that the Holy Spirit intended me to have that day. So I love it. We're rounding out at an hour now, because that's what happens when we all speak to one another. But I think I would love to hear, kind of in closing, just how can we recommend that women go about discerning maybe a self-care practice or two to commit to, or at least when we're recording this, we're in a new year. By the time this is posted, we'll be through Q1 of 2026, if you will. But if you're a woman in recovery, or seeking recovery, what's a self-care practice you can commit to? How do you discern? My thought immediately goes to just like, where do you feel the strain? Like, where's the major stressors in your life? Where are you regularly triggered? Where do you feel the unrest and the strain? And what is a way to authentically care for yourself in that space? Do you feel the strain in body image? Then like maybe turn your attention to movement or food practices that honor you and help you pursue healing. Do you feel the strain in isolation or relationships? Then maybe look to solitude, or some other form of care for your body and yourself, or for your mind, that are really important. But that's like the question that comes to mind of, if a woman's listening to this, she's like, how do I even begin to discern what self-care looks like for me? It's like, where's the pain? Where's the strain and the stress? And start there. That's where your body and your mind are probably crying out for some form of care. So I think starting there is good place.
I love that you mentioned that, Rachel. I'm almost gonna like stem off of it, because I also think it's like, where do you feel the unrest? Where do you feel the strain? Where do you feel stretched thin almost? And then also when you're noticing those places, I think it's really important to take into account within your discernment your triggers and your hormones. Because one form of self-care that I didn't that I didn't put down or share earlier was just probably monthly, I will try to watch a movie that I just know is gonna make me cry. Because about once a month, and it can like culminate to the end of the month, it can happen whenever, but as women, we are asked to carry a lot on a daily basis. Um, like a lot happens at work, a lot happens in our personal lives, and it's very easy to push those things off and to look to everyone else and their needs, and to ignore your own. And I know specifically that happens a lot for me. So if I feel like I am maybe reacting a little bit too harshly towards something, or feelings are a little stronger than they like have been in the past couple of weeks. I will just try to watch a movie that is going to make me cry. And then I get it out. I have my little moment and I'm just like, yeah, this is great. But that is such a well-known self-care act for me that like if I text my fiance and I'm like, yeah, today I watched a movie and just had a good cry. He's not like concerned. He's like, oh yeah, that's great. You must have needed it, you know? um, but yeah, when you're discerning these things, everything that we listed, obviously, I think we've made this known, but just to reiterate again, everything that we've mentioned specifically is completely subjective. It's what works for us, it's what works in this season specifically. And the things that we mentioned may not even work for us in the next year because seasons change. But discernment is the objective part of this whole episode. So while you're discerning, I would just encourage you to recognize your hormones and where you are in your cycle, because that is a specifically like feminine like issue within this whole space. Not issue as it's bad, it's actually beautiful, but it does offer another realm of discernment within this. And then also you have to be mindful of your triggers because that's what makes us all subjective. Like I cannot do the same things that Rachel and Annie can do because I have different triggers than Rachel and Annie, you know? And if I share with my accountability partner who like that something works, maybe we share a common trigger and then we can like bond on that specific thing. But yeah, that's just my little pitch as a closing thought. Um, yeah, on discernment, triggers and hormones.
My last pitch, off of the last two things that you shared is invite other trusted people into your discernment because they know you well. I talk about this fairly often with my husband, with my best friend, with my therapist. Like, am I caring for myself well? Does this sound right for me? Because these are people who know me very well in my practices. Like I know just on the reverse side, one of my best friends a few months ago was having a really horrible day. And I knew exactly what to do. I invited her over. I played one of her favorite movies. I got all of our favorite like foods out, favorite drink. Like I knew what to talk to her about that would make her laugh. And same thing for me. This same individual, maybe a month prior when I was having a horrible day, came over and within minutes she had me like laughing so hard that I couldn't even breathe. And I was like in a horrible state before because she knows me so well. She knows what to talk to me about. She knows what food to bring me. She knows the things that are going to care for me. And so I think as we discern self-care things, don't be afraid to invite other people into it. Does this sound like a good practice for me? Because all the things we shared might be awesome for us in this season of life, but might not be great for you. So invite other people into the process.
Absolutely. I also think there's like, yeah, we can be super idealistic when creating any sort of new routine or trying to make a new habit, new discipline. Even if that discipline's rest, we can be super idealistic. I found it's super helpful to discern like, yeah, what's my ideal? And then also like, what's the baseline need? So when it comes to movement, for instance, like, my ideal would be like 5 good workouts a week and 10K steps a day or something. I'm spitballing kind of what my ideal is right now, and that changes. But what's my baseline? Just daily movement of some kind. If that's a 10-minute walk, that's great. If it's a lifting session, that's great, right? Like baseline versus ideal. And I think that's because the baseline will still meet the need that I have there. And so even when planning these things or thinking about these things and what kind of practices to commit to, maybe have, baseline, what's the actual need? And then, you can dream a little. What's the ideal? And if you meet the ideal one day, awesome. If you don't meet it the next day, it's okay. Just try to meet the baseline and actually meet your need. So that's just a way that I pursue balance when thinking about these things too. Any other thoughts before we close out other than women are great and everyone care for yourselves because you're deserving of it? Anybody? Any other closing thoughts?
If anyone has ever tried the cucumber on the eye thing, let me know how it works. Okay.
I forgot to tell you I've done that. I forgot to say. So.
And was it a positive experience?
Pointless. It was pointless.
Oh.
It's like in Princess Diaries. Does anyone remember that scene in Princess Diaries?
Yeah, he eats
the cucumber does nothing.
The cucumber does nothing. Yeah.
Yes.
And then he eats one. Yeah,
Listen
I remember
to
that.
Paolo.
listen to Paolo. On that note, thanks for joining us today. We'll be back again with some exciting episodes for the rest of season 6 that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. But we're excited to welcome you back into the conversations that we're having in Magdala's community. Know of our prayers, especially if you're a woman in recovery or seeking recovery. We see you, and you can check out our resources below. God bless you all, and have a good day.
Thanks for listening. Check out more podcast episodes, blog posts, and how to get involved with Magdala by visiting our website, magdalaministries.org. Your love is meant to change the world. We hope to see you soon.